Welcome to the Get Up and Scale podcast. Today, we have Kelsey Tonner with Guest Focus. He's been doing his tour business coaching practice for almost 10 years now, since January 2015. Prior to that, he was a tour development expert and tour leader for Backroads for 4 years. And he's had a lot of other interesting tourism-related experience prior to that, mostly in the land of the North, Canada. So we'd like to welcome our Canadian tour expert, tour coast, tour...
Stick the landing, Kai. Stick the landing.
You got it.
Kelsey Tonner. We're leaving that in.
This is good.
We're going to roll with it, baby.
I gotta work, grind. That's just the way it is. I gotta get up, scale, and grow my biz. I gotta scale, grow, get up, go, scale, grow, get up, go.
How's it going, eh? You know, I can really lay it on thick for the our American listeners. But I've met people from Canada. I'm like, you have the most Canadian accent I've ever heard. You know, like Canada's vast. It's right. Like, what's the American accent, right? So you know, there's the regional differences within, but there's some people that I was like, oh, you're the people that everyone makes fun of. You know, it's like a lot of people in Alberta. There's definite, like, obviously, like Newfoundlanders and out east in the Maritimes. That's where I'm from originally, and then I married into the West Coast. But yeah, it's usually you'll pick it up on the those OUs. It's enough subtlety in there.
You got to lean into it, you know, lean into the Canadian accent.
So is it Kelsey Tonner or Toner? Because I feel like you might have effed that one up, Kai.
Yeah, it's Toner, but phonetically, you're on point, right? Like, it makes no sense to have a double N and go with it, but that's just what it was. Some sort of Scottish ancestry back there. I'll have to check out. There's actually one other. This is kind of a hilariously side note, but there's another Kelsey Tonner out there in the world, and she's this poor, like, young woman from Scotland. And I just was lucky enough to be born first and went in and got like kelseytoner.com. I claimed the handles. I did all the stuff. And like, I feel bad for her because she was just like, probably became a teenager and was just like, who?
When you say poor, do you mean that
that's why she's poor?
Is she financially destitute? You're saying she's a poor young woman?
I only imagine that the economic opportunity that's been denied her from not having kelseytoner.com or any of her aspirations for personal brand. Anyway.
Kelsey Tonner. Let's do it again. Welcome. No, I'm just kidding. Kelsey Tonner. I got it.
Great to be here, guys.
There you go.
Thanks
I
for
love the
joining us.
conversations you're having.
Yeah. I hear you're a fan.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah, no, and you guys are obviously, it's fun to talk to folks like yourselves who, more than many, let's say in the long tail of small to medium-sized tour business owners who have family businesses. They often have, goals that suit their lifestyle, but it's always fun to talk to folks who are really thinking about, hey, what if we 10x this? What would this look like if we were across multiple states? Well, so we love those types of conversations, and we work with, I would say that's a subset of the people that we work with, but they're some of the most rewarding to work with, candidly, because of what often is associated with that, which is an ambition, a drive, a ruthless desire for the most efficient and best possible way to do something.
Ruthless.
Which is what you're after, right? Yeah, you're not going to scale something that is an unnecessary cost. What did you do? You just it's 10x that cost. You 10x that convoluted process, that headache. You guys know about this, right? You don't want to 10x your problems. So I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, how did this all get started? Like, when did you notice that there was a gap, in the marketplace when it comes to educating tour operators, coming up with tour design, helping tour guides? Like, I think that's where I first maybe found you, was how to give a tour. I feel like that's maybe something that I searched on YouTube when I first started, because I had never given a tour before. And I remember seeing some videos that like you had went into. Like, how did you identify that gap in the marketplace when you first got started?
Yeah, I appreciate the question and the fandom, the likes and subscribes from years ago before we had crossed paths. Look, I grew up, like I said, I did my university in Canada, and I took any job really. I didn't do a gap year, so it was just like that educational slog. And after 4 years of university, took any job that allowed me to travel, see the world, meet new people, new places. So quickly fell into tourism. As you mentioned, I did a number of guiding jobs. I was a dog sledding guide in the Rockies,
cool.
in the Canadian Rockies, which is fun. Did high ropes,
Whoa.
adventure experiences in
Dog sledding?
Australia. Yeah, I was a dog sled guide in Kenmore, just in the Canadian Rockies there. Very cool job.
That sounds awesome.
For a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of stories there for another time. But then basically I picked up with Backroads Tours. And that was really where I was like able to do this full time. I was able to work in probably about 45 different countries over the span of my career with them. So I was leading,
Wow.
it's an active travel trip, companies. And so they do bike trips, multi-sport, meaning blends, and hiking trips. And so now I was leading like hiking trips through the Atlas Mountains in Morocco and through Southeast Asia, across Canada, and then a lot of focus in Europe. And so what that allowed me suddenly was just this exposure, obviously to the incredible places and people, but really like a huge number of tour and activity operators, right? Any given multi-day tour, especially if you're like quality obsessed, like Backroads was, the best possible experiences, the most unique, the most impactful. I got to see what some of the most successful, unique, compelling experiences on the planet were, and then just across destinations, cultures. And so that was a real sort of crash course. With Backroads, I eventually then got into, tour guide training. I got into trip development. So went into the Burgundy region, for example, and then said, hey, here's your KPI or your key performance indicator. We need to get this. It was the least successful or lowest ranked trip in Europe. We want to change that. So then basically it was like a year's focus of, okay, what's going wrong with this trip? So in a multi-day context there. And part of that was like swapping out suppliers. It's like, this is a real phone it in, mediocre tour that we've got built in here. So how are we going to change that? Or this experience is okay. I remember there was like wine tasting experiences. They don't frustrate me, but they're like, you talk about something that is like, what an area for innovation or change. Like you go to wineries around the world, and this is 9 times out of 10, the exact same experience. Like no differentiation really, like obviously focusing on the product. So for example, we had that on the tour, and I was like, all right, what can we do? And I talked to one of our chateaus, and they had like a 900-year-old wine cellar that was just like kicking around. They're like, oh, it's dusty, we don't go down there. I was like, yes, like, all right, what can we do to that space?
It's dusty. We don't go down there.
yeah, exactly.
We'll
get rid of the rats. But you can imagine now, suddenly we had ambiance, we had candles, we had wines, we had the wine expert come in. I swapped out the wine expert who was more of a storyteller and less stuffy and really information driven to somebody that like obviously had a ton of passion. And this just went from like, one of the lowest or average ranked experiences to something that was a highlight of the trip. It shows up in the reviews, people, these types of things. So anyway, that was kind of the work there. I met my wife through there. So that was a big perk with Backroads is met Sarah. She was a Canadian, but we led trips together. We traveled together. We wanted to start a family, and that's kind of when we stepped back from Backroads. So Justin, when you're asking, hey, how did you arrive at making videos for tour leaders on the internet? That was where we arrived. We said, well, what is our unique, what have we learned? How can we serve people? Or how can we add value to the world? And candidly, there were 2 things going on. One, we still were passionate about travel. So we said, we want to build a business, but we want to build a location independent business. That was a huge priority. We could have done all kinds of other things, in-person guide training, various things, but it's got to be location independent. So that allowed us to continue that traveling lifestyle while then still building a community, which was the Be a Better Guide project, which was basically all about raising the bar on what it meant to create incredible experiences for people. We wanted to connect operators and guides and freelancers that like, there's so many phone it in, like forgettable experiences out there. Life is too short for boring. Like, let's step it up. And if that resonates with you, then like, come with us. Like, or we got some stuff for you. And then the business model, as you probably recall, and again, Kai, I'm not sure if we had crossed paths at that time, but was essentially coaching, online courses, training, that type of thing. And so the slight evolution that happened, I'll fast forward here, is basically 4 years ago, we rebranded just to Guest Focus, where we kind of had that same overall vision for the world, which is like, we want to help fill the world with unforgettable experiences, like full stop. When we travel, those are the types of experiences I want from my family and the people in our community want. So that's still the overarching everything. But then now our mission got a lot more focused with the change to guest focus, which was, let's build the world's best tour business coaching program, right? We're just going to focus in on that. And we realized not only were most of the people who were enrolling in our programs learning from us already entrepreneurs and like having that entrepreneurial spirit, quite candidly, versus like a freelance guide or an employee, but also that's how you fill the world. It's like, this company needs to be successful, right? This company needs to last more than a season or two, or potentially even beyond a generation or two. And that's how you can have that sustainability with our mission. So that's what we've been up to for the last 3 or 4 years. And kind of the transition, obviously Be a Better Guide was a bit misleading as we shifted to just focus on building and helping scale thriving, profitable tour businesses.
Yeah.
That was quite an overview.
Yeah. I like how there was a slight tangent down into the don't get me started on the wine tasting experiences.
I'd love to dig into that. I'm curious. I definitely know what you mean by a forgettable experience, right? An average experience. I think everyone have experienced that many times. What makes an experience exceptional in your point of view? I know we're all in the business of tourism and crafting these. You know, when you work with your clients, what is it that sets the unforgettable experiences from the mundane, right? In your point of view?
Yeah, we actually have a framework that we teach in the program. It's actually on my list. I was like, wow, we don't actually have a YouTube video on our Guest Focus YouTube channel on what we call the Unforgettable Product Pyramid, but very simple. It's not too complex. This really kind of came to me as I was asking this exact same question, Kai, which is like, what makes something more memorable? And so basically, it's loosely based on this idea of the Maslow's pyramid of needs. But as we move from the bottom of the pyramid to the top, you get increasingly memorable, increasingly impactful, that type of thing that you're going to remember 10 years later, 20 years later, versus like a week later, right? That's what we really mean. So at the bottom level, you've got this like most physical, primal things, like your physiological needs. Like you got to have a tour that's mindful of like, okay, it's South Texas and it's like middle of summer and people are just like hot and the sun's in their face and like that's just not going to work, or they're cold, or they've got to pee because your tour is 3 hours or 5 hours and there's no bathroom break. So there's kind of that base level. Like you just got to take care of that. Next level up is kind of safety. So we focus in on the safety level that is, of course, physically safe. People need to feel physically safe. So again, for those that are doing like kayak type tours or even a pedal pub type experience, like there's a briefing. There's some like things you got to go through to make sure this experience goes well. Again, still pretty fundamental, but then you extend that, of course, to, some of the less tangible, but just as important. So beyond physical safety, which is a no-brainer, but like the physiological safety. Like, do I feel like this is a place where I'm comfortable? Like, am I under like, obviously not like physical threat from other guests, but, is there like bullying going on? Is there meanness? Is there like, you really have to have people feeling safe in order to have that increasingly memorable experience. Okay, then we get into more interesting. The next two layers, and I'll just keep this as the high level overview, is having to do with the sort of social and the a sense of community. So again, what think of your average experience where you're just going through something alone, and you're just one of 50 people following a flag through the crowded piazza, versus building a social bond with your guide, so guest to guide or host, and guest to guest. And so there's a number of ways that you can do this, but a simple example would be really framing this as a journey we're going to go on together. So that can be a physical journey. We're going to like go through these places. It can be more of a more metaphorical journey. Like, so over the next couple hours, we're going to be walking through the sewer system of London, and we're gonna go through, and it could be a physical journey, or maybe we're gonna go back in time. We're gonna see some of the earliest efforts, things like that. I love that challenge aspect, right? Where you can say like any tour. I remember doing that. It's like simple, like in Naples underground. I don't know if you guys have heard of this tour, but basically underneath the city of Naples, there's these not Florida Naples, but Italy Naples. There's those old aqueducts and sort of tunnels that the I think would have been Romans, but Greeks and Romans built. And anyway, they're kind of like squeezing through. There's just like, it's not a super challenging tour, but you have to work together as a group to like go on this journey to get through it. And when you can highlight that, we would do it on a bike tour too. Like, hey, if somebody's got a flat tire, or, you know, if somebody needs some extra help, or there's this real sense of camaraderie. Like, we're going to go through this journey together, but we got to have each other's back. That type of bonding, like with the most extreme, like Band of Brothers type stuff, that really helps make that a memorable experience. Hey, remember when we did that together? Hey, do you remember how amazing that guide was, that special bond? We've all probably had that experience with a guide where we had that bond, even if it wasn't with all the other guests, but we had it with the guide. And the tippy top and last one is a transformation. So a couple quick points. Well, let's explain it, and then I'll go through those 2 points. What is that transformation? This is where there has to be some kind of maybe the before and after the tour, there's some kind of difference. It doesn't have to be a massive change, but usually this involves with like a change in thinking, a change in belief pattern. Maybe you appreciated something relatively profound in a new way. And that could be simply, wow, I never had an appreciation for the apartheid in South Africa until I went on that Soweto tour. And now I have, like, there's a transformation, a change in the belief. My comfort zone may have been pushed. And that last level is really where you get that most memorable. So Kai, like 30 years from now, you might go back and remember that, and this happens all the time outside of tours and activities too. Like, think of that teacher, or that it might be a relative or friend that really like transformed you in some sort of meaningful way. That's the type of transformation experience. Now, this begs the question, should all tours aspire to that kind of transformation? No, absolutely not. I think you can move up the pyramid to become increasingly memorable, but like, is that what I'm focused on if I'm doing a pedal pub for a bachelorette experience? Like, are they like, is the goal, the mission of that tour to have some transformation, or have them have some new view of like whatever, social justice or other things? It's like, probably not, right? So it would be more memorable if they went on that type of journey, but that may not be part, or it shouldn't feel like every tour has to go all the way to the top of the pyramid. But that's sort of the scaffolding that we teach when you're thinking about experience design.
Yeah. I feel like you're the John Taffer, the bar rescue of tour operations. Like, I feel like it would be fun for you to go into, just kind of like you said, how your journey started, like go into a really shitty tour operation, the worst tours in America, and then just turn them into the best tours. That would be a fun TV show, wouldn't it? Like, I feel like that'd be cool.
I like this. I the reference is lost to me, so I don't know if we referenced, but I got the Gordon Ramsay Kitchen Nightmares kind
similar
of vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
We can go in, and as long as I'm like, I think I got to ramp up, leave some of that Canadian kindness or whatever in the drawer, and be like, all right, new effers, like,
what the
heck
start
were you
like really
thinking?
drilling into people. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I like that. I think it's a great concept too. And what I loved about, I don't know if you've ever seen some of those Kitchen Nightmares or a show, but I'm not a huge fan, but I have seen a couple episodes where they go back and revisit that operator or that restaurant.
How they're doing.
6 months later, 12 months later. What a great idea of like, hey, is this stuff sticking? Were you able to implement these best practices or advice?
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So the next question, and I love that pyramid idea, and it makes total sense that like not everyone needs to be at the top of the pyramid to give a great experience, and I forget the guy, but I listened to some guy speak once, and he said that on average people only remember like 3 days of the previous month.
Oh, wow.
And so so like that's what sticks in my mind is like, how do you become one of those 3 days, or make it a fourth day, in the month. And I think that concept is cool. But my question is like, how do you scale the business that you're in now? Because it seems like you're the one with a lot of that information. You're the one with the experience. Like, how do you scale that? I feel like it could be difficult being that person, but I know that you have brought on educators to help with that kind of stuff. Like, how do you look at scaling your own business?
Oh, from like guest focused tour business coaching, like how we've added coaches and expanded our own operation. Yeah,
that's what this show's about.
Yeah. All right, let's talk. Look, a big part of I think the success that we have fortunate enough to have, and what I hope will continue to drive our success going forward, is having that ability to simplify things and having that ability to put things into like a methodology or some types of system. And so one of the things that we wanted to do, which was, let's look at obviously some of the most successful, profitable tour and activity businesses on the planet. And just for context, about half of our members that we work with are in the multi-day space, and about half are in the day tour space. So we do have a foot in both of these worlds. So you'll catch me speaking on both sides of it. And same with our coaching team. About half of our coaches, our coaching team now about 12 coaches who have all built and grown and scaled their own tour and activity businesses. But we started realizing we got getting a lot of interest and traction with these multi-day operators as well. We were struggling with a lot of the same sort of challenges. So anyway, we draw very specifically from our coaches from that world. But getting back to this core point, when we looked at some of the most successful tour and activity operators, it's one thing to have a list of best practices, of like hacks and tips, but some of the most maybe impactful or memorable or clear teachings that I've gotten have been as part of an overarching methodology. And so that's really, if anything, like I said, how we differentiate ourselves, again, from other business coaches or other folks out there, is to really say, we put together what we feel is really the secret sauce to building and scaling a thriving, profitable tour business. There's many ways that you can do this, but here's our way, and it's rooted in what we've been talking about so far, which is now what we call our guest focus formula. So what is the key to scaling? Well, it was taking what was like a hodgepodge of like best practices, hey, do this, don't do this, if this, then that, and trying to distill it into a simplified but powerful, you could say philosophy, but more than that, it's this methodology. And so what is the guest focus formula? It's simply put, the key to scaling, the key to growing a thriving, profitable tour business is to keep the guests at the heart of everything you do in your business. It's kind of like a touch point. It's not that dissimilar from like the Amazon mantra of like customer obsession, but we just leaned into and love this idea of guest because it so more accurately captures the way that we feel you should treat people in the hospitality industry. In our niche, we welcome people. It's a lot different than just a customer, a client, a transaction, right? So that guest focus formula obviously applied, Justin, when we first connected, years ago in the Be a Better Guide project. And we often think of, well, the guest experience is while they're there. But what I quickly realized when I was out there leading tours is that if you truly want to serve people at the highest possible level, the real unlock here is that you need to change your tour design, right? That's when you move away from generic tours and experiences to serving we love the term niche, a micro niche, but your ideal target guest. And so you keep your ideal target guest at the heart of your product design, your products, your services. You keep your ideal target guest at the heart of writing sales. What is good sales? It's like knowing who you're selling to, what's important to them, what their values are, what their goals are, etc. So that's guest focused sales, guest focused tour design, guest focus, yes, delivery, like on the experience, making sure that they have the best possible time. But in guest focused marketing is that same sort of thing. Or that best practice when it comes to how do we get attention, which is all really marketing is, you've got to be super clear on who your ideal target guest is and what are the problems that you solve for them, right? How can you position your products and services, your tours, activities, and experiences as solutions to their problems, right?
So for the operators out there listening that have customer data, their waiver data, they're looking at the age, the gender of their guests, how do you recommend they get started narrowing down what that is? Like you said, like what their values are, who they are, what they do. That can be like an overwhelming task at first, but I know, as you said, it's very important.
Yeah, and there's a difference too between playing defense and kind of offense. So we always encourage people to move into that offensive position where I'm actively going after more of these clients. And we sometimes do that when that emerges from maybe our waiver data or sales data, like, oh, look at all of these corporate bookings, or maybe we had 2 or 3 come in. Wow, I'd love to get 10 more of those a year. Or what would that look like if we got those consistently instead of sporadically wherever? And then you can move into playing offense, right? And then you start applying the guest focus formula, but very specific to that niche. your question was a bit broader though, of like, if you're an existing operator, I'd like to frame it as this, like, we're not out there as the guest focused coaching team and in our recommendations and in our methodology saying that you have to turn away business, right?
Okay.
But we are saying your marketing and your sales pages, they should be laser focused on who you're selling to. And if you're doing this well, candidly, I'd love to flesh this out with you guys because I say it all the time, but yeah, I'll get your reaction. So I say, if you're doing this well, if you're doing this right, you're applying the guest focus formula, you're serving an ideal target guest very specifically. Can you add more than one ideal target guest? Yes, we can talk about that. But at least initially, you're serving that one ideal target guest the highest possible level. Then your tour, activity, or experience should actually be unappealing, uninteresting, or potentially even inaccessible to the majority of visitors to your destination. It feels counterintuitive, right?
Mhm.
But to me, that's actually a good indication that you're differentiated enough, that you have a clear value proposition for a very specific person, a very specific guest. And I think this applies to the vast majority of small to medium-sized businesses. We get into a bit of a different game if we're talking about the Louvre, or you're the Cathedral
Yeah.
Notre Dame, or something like this, right? That
Yeah.
when you're a massive attraction and dealing with millions and millions of visitors to that destination, in my mind, you're still applying our best practices, which would be that guest focus formula, but you're getting into a different game. You're getting into a game of perceived customization, where you have one underlying, let's say, core attraction or core product, but how you sell it is then different for all of those different groups, niches, etc. There's a beautiful company. I'm talking a lot. Interrupt anytime, but I get fired up on this stuff. So there's a great company you guys should check out. They're Rotorua Canopy Tours. So they're down in New Zealand. Rotorua is a town there, and they have this, what is essentially like an aerial park and zip line experience. And so they have this. It's one core ticket to get in, right? And it's a very popular destination. They were like #1 on TripAdvisor a few years back. Like really impressive company in lots of ways. But you go to their sales homepage, and what does it say? One of the first things they ask is, who are you? Who are you traveling with? And then you can select, oh, I'm a couple. Oh, I'm a senior flyer, like 65, 70 plus or something like that. Oh, I'm a group, or I'm a bachelorette experience. And when you click on that, you then get into different sales pages for each one of those groups. Rotorua. So
This one right here.
R-O, that's the spelling there.
Yeah, I figured.
So, and anyway, so what I love about that is if you click senior flyers, you go to that landing page, what do you see? You see a number
Seniors.
of guest-focused sales best practices, which is, hey, who should appear in your images, in your media, in your videos? Your ideal target guests. They can now see themselves. There's pictures of senior folks up there, the gray hair, they're in the zip line, they're walking above the canopy. The FAQ,
so their website will basically customize based on how you fill out the intake form when you first visit the website.
yeah, except
The
it's not
content
forms. They're just big
changes.
buttons. They're just big buttons.
Yeah.
Hey, what best describes you? So anyway, just a great example of perceived customization if you are in that larger attraction game. But from most folks, I don't think you need to go there. What you need to do is like pick a lane.
I'm interested in this concept, right? Like the theory,
Yeah.
or the idea that your tour should be so dialed in on your ideal customer that it should be unappealing to a majority of the visitors. Okay, so let's apply that to a concept like ours. Let's call it the paddle pub, right? So
Yep.
we do 2-hour tours on a paddle pub in various locations across the country. Right,
Yep.
You come on board, there's a cycle station, you can bring your own drinks, there's a Bluetooth stereo system. How would you apply that concept, just to take this idea and try to apply it to one of ours?
Yeah.
How would you
totally.
apply that to the paddle pub?
Yeah. So again, we could imagine. I can imagine, and I'm sure you do. And for the folks that are using those vessels all across the country, I'm sure they get a huge variety of different people who are coming. Maybe I want to go
Right.
there, and it's a company that's celebrating a year end. Maybe it's a bachelorette group. Maybe it's a people uniting together for buddies, right? So the question then becomes, okay, if I want to get more of that particular customer, then go all in on that experience. So there's I'm trying to think of some other examples.
So I'm like, I guess the idea is like we try to be pretty broad, right? Because we're trying to
Yeah.
tap bachelorette parties, but maybe families that want to see dolphins.
Yep.
Right. So we intentionally try to keep it broad.
Yeah.
But, would you suggest to, let's say, a business like ours, well, hey, craft various listings that are targeted towards specific ideal customers, or do you keep
Absolutely.
a single listing and try to make it as broad as possible? You'd
No.
say the other way, right? You
Yeah,
target.
I think you're doing yourself a disservice because now part of that, it feels counterintuitive, right? Because we want to be thinking, well, the way to grow is to sell as much as possible to as many people as possible. But if you want to get really clear on your value proposition, if you want to hit those really tangible benefits, not only might you do need to adjust your marketing. Like, let's say we're focusing on the bachelorette experiences, like what the value proposition is, the reason they might want to do it, the like feature benefit stack, the images that you use, like all the testimonials. Like if I have 20 testimonials from other bachelorette organizers who have like, I've used this to book my bachelorette experience, best thing ever, oh my gosh, what a highlight, like that is so much more compelling and will drive so many more sales for that bachelorette channel. So you've got a couple options, and you guys are at a degree of scaling where you can be getting into this thing where, yes, we have multiple different ideal target customers. The great example is having a corporate landing page. So we did this corporate boot camp where we got talking to our coaching team, and we realized that between like 3 or 4 of these guest focused coaches, they do between $1 million and $2 million and some more a year in corporate sales, and just on like single destinations. We said, whoa, okay, like break this down for us. Like, what can you give us a playbook? What are the best practices, etc. And so we ran that boot camp in just after arrival last year at the end of 2023, and we were able to call out some of these their best practices. But that's a great example, Kai, where it's like, hey, we have this one single landing page that's for all private bookings. It's like, hey, we help you do whatever the team building type event. Yeah, you can do a bachelorette experience here. Hey, just want to book a private thing? And it's all kind of glommed into this sort of generic, vague value proposition and then a contact us form. Versus what we encourage people to do is like, well, pick a corporate niche. Again, let's just focus in on corporate for a second, leave private side. Are you going to focus in on team building? Then talk about all of the ways that this offer, you might tweak the design, what's included. I know some bachelorette folks, they added a bunch of things like, hey, with like one-click upsell, we'll give you all the penis straws you want. And like, hey, there's all this like fun extra stuff. And they crush it with those things because they're able to like meet their needs. And so part of that is having a corporate menu that's optimized around just 1 or 2 niches, instead of trying to be all things to every company everywhere. So it's like, okay, are we going to go all in on client entertainment and engagement? So the real reason that you book one of our things is that we're going to take out your VIPs, your wine and dine, maybe their families are in town. We're going to make sure they have the best experience possible. We're going to reflect well in your brand. And that's our focus. We have, I don't know if you ever met Heather, but Heather is in our coaching program. She's in San Francisco. She does these Tesla VIP tours. So that type of tour lends itself well to the client entertainment engagement. So she went all in on focusing on that niche instead of being like, oh yeah, I can also do like your corporate team building. I'll get some buses. You know what I mean? It's like lasering that focus, and that applies to your marketing. You're going to get so much more return on your marketing investment, maybe ROAS if you're doing any type of paid ad spend, the more specific you are.
It strikes me that there's an inherent conflict between this, let's call it Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We have this pyramid of customer needs, and we have this customization you're speaking about, right? To target a guest focus and scalability, right? Yep. And, that's something we learned really early on. In the early days of Trolley Pub, we used to do brewery tours. We had food tasting tours. We did, progressive dinner, right? We did all these things. And within the first couple of years, I cut out all the other tours, and I'm like, we're doing 2-hour pub crawls because that's what 90% of our clients want. And that 10% of complexity was taking up 90% of our time.
Love it.
Right.
Love it.
But our goal was like to be scalable, we need to be broader, right? And so that was our early model with opening new locations is we're going to do one thing, we're doing well. We're doing 2-hour pub crawls, right? Maybe that's exactly what you're talking about. But like
exactly what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. But part of what we were saying was, you know, the top of the pyramid is the hardest part to scale. Like, 'cause I feel like it's the most like resource intensive part, right? Like providing the boat and the captain, this is lower on this pyramid, right? Then you hire your staff and you have some minimal level of training, right? Like, okay, these guys are going to be safe. The captain's going to get them from point A to point B, right? Then you're like, all right, now we need to make this like below the transformational experience, you know, you have this like connection where you facilitate that. That's harder to do. That's going to be based on the personality of the captain, right? Maybe the people
But
that are on board.
training
And
that
then,
you can give them, best practices that you can give them. Hey, say
so
this. This is how you're
that's the
gonna improve.
question.
Yes.
How do you make this higher value tour, this higher value offering scalable? Because they seem like they're in conflict with one another.
Yeah, and I think we love that Venn diagram. We use it often. So just two overlapping circles, right? On the left is your business, your tour and activity experience business, right? So in there would be your values, your vision, your goals, including things like your profit goals, your take-home pay goals, your growth goals, etc. And on this side would be the ideal target guests and their needs, wants, desires, pain points, frustrations. And then really when obviously the most profitable place to build that tour and activity business, or where you can more easily find product market fit, to use a different language, is in that area where it overlaps, right? So again, Kai, you can imagine us building this like 15-star, highly customized experience, but it is not profitable, or the margins would be so low. It doesn't scale. It's very like human. It requires highly talented or uniquely skilled. There was like a Toronto tour that I really loved that was like former police officers who were leading it. And that was their big thing. It was like, hey, we're retired police officers. We're going to give you some real insight into the places they toured and kind of I think there was a jail and they were telling stories and stuff. I was like, this is pretty tough to scale up. Guys, like maybe there's enough retired policemen here, but like you could see here how, Kai, that might conflict. So you got to balance these things. I'm not out here saying that you got to make those sacrifices. Of course, your priorities for the business. So let's get into some of the like what I think you're after, which is like, well, how can I do this? So you're trying to create impactful experiences at scale. You're trying to create replicable, cost-efficient experiences, right? And especially for scaling, you want to keep those costs down as much as possible, or within a range that is scalable, or the business model works. So like often the things that can have the most impact are not the things that actually require a big jump in cost. So like here's a simple example of like taking a fairly like average experience and then like, okay, how do we notch this up? The framework I can give you to is SPAM. This is how I remember it. But like think if we want to make our tour more memorable, the other framework we use is special moments, special access, and special people. I said it in the wrong order. SPAM. Special people, special access, special moments. And so how do we create those things on tour? And so, well, we had, let's go back to Burgundy. So I was there, we had this very average, like pretty crappy picnic midweek. And we're like, ooh, this is like a real rundown rural French park. This is not vibing with our like, you know, at that time, $4,000 or $5,000 per person bike trip. Like we need this to be a more memorable experience. So, and again, I'm doing this for me as the guide, but I'm also at the tour design level, right? So this tour is going to run 24 times over the next month. It's a multi-day context. You guys can imagine, this tour is going to run like potentially thousands of times, right? Over the year. So what did we do to elevate that picnic? We said, well, let's find a new spot. This spot is just not the vibe. And we said, okay, it's got a nice view and we're overlooking the vines, right? Where the grapes were, the grain. It's like, that'd be kind of a neat experience if we could get bottles of wine from the village winery that's down here. It may not be the best wine in the world, but we can then have this moment where we're like, no, this came from these grapes, these exact things. That's what we're drinking. We would get vine leaves and we had a beautiful presentation. So we made the picnic look absolutely beautiful. We're in Burgundy. And so I was like, okay, Dijon mustard. It doesn't matter if you know the history or not, but basically that is also made in Burgundy. And even just from the local like equivalent of the Superstore or Walmart, the Carrefour had these, it was this like artisanal tasting set of different Dijon mustards. Some were like made with cassis and some were made with the different wines. I was like, oh, great. And we got some like really lovely breadsticks. Like this is the type of thing that costs like maybe 10 euros, the breadsticks, maybe another like 4 or 5. But suddenly, you can see how we're building the experience. We don't stop there. We keep asking, how could this be more memorable? Oh, that Edith Piaf song that everyone knows, the Vie en Rose is like, all right, we're getting the Edith Piaf, we're pulling up the van, we're going to have her wafting over the whole thing, right? So like, you can see here how we're moving a pretty average phone it in kind of picnic experience to something that is, yes, it takes more intention, but I set that up such that I created the leader's notes. So like on your shop before the trip, you have to get this, this, and this. Whoever is setting up the picnic, be sure to stop in. I think we just pre-bought the wine from the winery ahead of time, right? So I created all the conditions so that picnic experience, the Edith Piaf link to the playlist, like all of those things were part of a system so that we could recreate what felt like that beautiful French picnic moment. But it was intentional, it was designed in a way to be, candidly, relatively like low cost and repeatable. Talk more about it, but just an example of how that like doesn't have to break the bank necessarily.
Where do you think most tour operators are missing out right now? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it tour design? Like, what are you seeing that most people are getting wrong?
Yeah, great question. I think candidly, sorry, I have 3 young daughters. They're age 7, 4, and 2 right now, and they brought home all manner of plagues over the last weeks. Like I've just been like, this might
Don't
be
worry.
this might
I
be the last
understand.
episode of anything I do. So you guys tell my story if I croak
Just
live.
continue live. Just we need you for what we got. Like we got you for 20 more
Wait,
minutes.
what part of Canada are you in? Like we can send a note or something.
Yeah,
Just shoot a little adrenaline and just to keep that ticker
Can't
going
drink
for
that
a little bit
coffee.
longer.
Yeah, you got it. What am most getting wrong? You guys are probably hearing it, but it's like marketing. Everybody thinks they have a marketing problem, right? They're like, the most common question, if you had to distill it down, there's lots, but everybody's like, how do I get my tour in front of more people, right? This is the sense of like, if I could just solve that, then everything would be solved. And so when you work with like a guest focused coach or a mentor, like this is why I think our methodology and our work is so impactful, because we bring it right back to the fundamentals. Like, your marketing is not working because you don't know who you're serving, you don't know who you're targeting, and then so many of the problems after that, I get diagnosed really, really quickly. Like you can start to see where you're spinning your wheels, where you're wasting marketing budget, the things that aren't all that effectual, why your sales page isn't resonating. So we kind of build back up step by step, but to me, that's the root of it all. Like that's why we call it the guest focus. That's why it sort of grounds everything back. And for those of you like Kai and Justin, I know you guys have big vision. So like if you, Kai, are at the point where like, hey, I feel like to expand, to grow my business, to grow my profits, I want to add more customers. So the advice give you a strategy from our coaching team.
I would like more customers. Yes. I don't know about, how do you feel about more customers, Justin?
Yeah, we could.
Yeah, I think we're both on board with this.
Yeah,
I'm on
The
board
way
too.
to do that, it's not this like, hey, here's some new marketing hack, some new thing that's just going to like get your offer in front of more people. It's like rip off another segment of the market and go and destroy it. So if you're going to go after bachelorette experiences, then like go and own it, right? You pick that channel. We have a dedicated sales funnel. It's like recreating the business in many ways, right? So you could imagine everything that goes into that, from the design of the experience. So I feel like that's a mistake too. We're like, okay, well, we still keep our generic experience. It's like, no, you gotta have an experience that's optimized around the bachelorette party or organizer's needs, wants, desires, right? So then we've changed the offer. Then we've created a sales page that's laser focused in. We've created an irresistible offer for that bachelorette organizer. Then our marketing channels. We're not doing the same tactics that we're doing over in that vertical or that we're doing to sell your pub tour. Where are they hanging out? What influencers are they following?
Pinterest.
You know about those companies, or perhaps what's the one that was like Batch? There's a Batch app. Yeah.
Yeah, we just, the CEO was a guest on our show just a few weeks ago.
Oh, great. Too funny.
Yeah.
So like a great example.
I thought you
where
were a fan,
Sorry?
Mr.
Yeah.
Kelsey Tonner. You thought you were a fan of the podcast. That was launched 3 weeks ago.
That was
Was that
episode
what
9.
I was booked originally to be on? I forget. I get mixed up. Kai.
Valid point.
But you take my point. You take my point, where it's just
I
like
do.
rip off that strip, and then go to the next one. Okay, we're going to focus on corporate team building just from the local city or local, like, whatever, 2 to 3 hour drive. Now I'm going to go aggressively after that, but focus exclusively on maybe it's the year-end.
I like this tactic. I do.
Yeah.
The thing I struggle with is when you have 40, 50 cities, and we're saying, okay, we're going to whip up a sales page. All right, we're times that times 50. We're going to set new processes or add new values. Let's say we add Dijon mustard to Paddle Pub. I think it sounds great, right? Well, now how do we coordinate supplying Dijon mustard for all, 40 tour scale locations?
Yeah.
I like it. I still think there's that conflict, right?
We'll leave the mustard aside for a second. It might be lost in some of your destinations, but but let's focus just on, like, okay, we want to have a
The
dedicated
Bachelorette.
Bachelorette
listing with its own
sales
offerings.
page.
Yes.
Here's a playbook for the marketing channels, the campaigns we're going to use. You know what I mean? That scales beautifully across destinations. That's a playbook that you can
You're
create
probably
in
right.
one city and then repeat across others.
Yeah.
I like
How do-
it.
But I'm still saying you will be able to get better product market fit if you do shift. Not to say you have to add a lot of expenses here, but I'm trying to think of what we did.
It's
this
not
for in
Dijon
Sydney.
mustard to be like the penis straws, right? Like, the vendors and
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or here's an even a bigger one, which is just like we were helping one of the companies in our program, and they were specifically targeting Bachelorette. So this is why it's coming up. And we did part of our methodology is a guest deep dive. So it's one thing to choose an ideal target guest, but it's another thing to actually talk to them, right? To actually start asking the right questions about what are their dream scenarios? What are your biggest frustrations and challenges? And that guest deep dive gives you so much, it's just this well you can go back to again and again for your sales pages, for your design, for your marketing channels, for getting your marketing messaging crystal clear. So what came through that by talking to Bachelorette organizers, direct language from multiple Bachelorette past customers. There's it's a huge pain in the ass dealing with Ubers and transportation and getting around, especially with splitting the costs. And so we're like, wow, I think we could actually get a lot more Bachelorette experiences by having the option for an included pickup. So hey, we'll just go, we'll come get you right from your Airbnb or local hotel and come down. And this was just solved a massive pain point or hurdle or objection. And through that, they were able to 3 or 4x their sales, right? Because that became part of the value proposition. They adjusted that. There was extra fees associated with it. There was extra complexity. You got to decide if that's worth it. And again, everything is, for you guys, mind is okay, does this scale across multiple cities? So not to say that's the right move there, but for their situation, if they wanted to get more of that market, that was a no-brainer. There was a lot of talk about bottomless mimosas too. And they're like, wow, we hadn't even thought, that's why I love the guest deep dive is, so now we've identified that ideal target guest. It allows you to identify, you don't ask what do you want? What is the tour? You ask what the problems and challenges, because it allowed them to see opportunities. So what came up over and over again was brunches. They were like, oh yeah, we're so focused on the Bachelorette party experience, whether it's on a bike or a tour or club hopping. But a lot of these women are open to activities in the morning. It's obviously not going to start at 8 a.m., but this came up over and over again of wow, I bought a brunch with bottomless mimosas where we don't have to do the reservations. We don't have to do anything. It's just this easy, more chill experience. And so they had a whole new product line that then came out. So they could increase their average order value. You can increase the revenue per customer, the profit per customer.
Yeah. And for those listening, the transportation issue is also a big hurdle for corporate tours. They hate dealing with that. It's especially when it involves alcohol. It's It's an HR thing that we've been investigating on how to overcome. But Kelsey, to your point, that's my What?
Open up Uber, guys. I don't understand why the transportation
Well, when you're
logistics
an
are.
HR manager and it's a group of 80
Right.
and
I have
people...
3 XLs coming. Problem solved, HR manager. I'm just kidding.
No,
But
there's a
I've never
lot
understood
because
that. I've never understood that objection nowadays when you call an Uber XL,
it's
You wanna-
because you're
you wanna give them
Ubering,
the
you're taking
easy
them
button.
to their cars and the company's paying for it.
so I'll
And
order the Uber XL for them if it makes them happy.
That's
I
a
do like
thing.
the idea of you here's the script on how you lecture the Bachelorette
Yeah.
organizer when you get them on the
You
phone.
can see I'm great at this. Yeah.
Uber and Lyft do have APIs for anyone like us to set up that service. That's a thing.
Oh,
and
that's
Oh,
cool.
crazy.
Yeah,
I didn't actually
it's
know
very
that.
cool.
Thanks for sharing, Brett.
But,
That's cool.
Kelsey, that's one of my favorite favorite parts about going on tours. I try and go on them like at least every other month, because I ask the customers, like while engaging with them, whether I'm the co-host or just participant, I'm asking them what else they're doing that weekend, where they're staying, what they've enjoyed doing so far. And oftentimes, like, you learn a lot, and we go back to the drawing board whenever we learn something. So
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Here's another best practice that I think Kai will resonate with you is when we bring that focus to both our product lineup and obviously our sales pages and then marketing, you get the efficiencies in the business, just like you saw when you just eliminated all those other products, tours. We talk with so many companies that they're like, the way I'm going to grow my business is by adding more offers, right? Different products, different options. And it's all part of that same thing that we're kind of diagnosing here, which is like, I have to sell more to more people. But that's not what we want. So even in the corporate space, the part of the secret sauce here is like moving away from even like custom corporate work, but coming up with a very simplified, lean corporate menu, right? And so here is the corporate experience. Another best practice for anyone who's listening or interested is these corporate experience upsells. So your menu, a great menu, in my opinion, can have just like one core experience. That's totally fine. But then you have the upsell options. So, hey, we've got these other packages, and you build that off of, your kind of needs and SWOT analysis and what we call the guest deep dive. So then you can put together like, oh, do you want to, after your team building corporate experience, do you want us to drop you off at a centralized location where we can like have that venue rental for you? Oh, would you like to add a DJ and like throw in a drink? Hey, no problem. Hey, do you want to add in a photographer? We've got a local photographer contract. He can come in, snap some photos for you. You get this great value add. And you can get obviously massively more markup when you're working in the corporate market. We have a whole section on corporate pricing, but you're just delivering so much more value. And you can bring that same markup to these experience enhancers. But you see what we're doing, Kai, it's almost like that perceived customization again. Like, I want you to feel like this has been personalized to your needs. It obviously gives you negotiating power. If I'm working with you as a local business, you come in kind of hot and you're like, my budget's like $20 a head. That's all I got. And we're like, hey, no problem. Here's our menu. But then we're like, oh, well, if you want this extra, like this is all it costs. And so some of our coaches were saying like, hey, I was able to like 2x or sometimes 3x the average order value just with these experience enhancers, right? Just by having that core thing. And then, yes, some little customizations like Brett, you're talking about, like pickup. Yeah, the pickup location we can shift. Yeah. But if they're like, no, we want to fundamentally change the design of this or the offer, or hey, can we do, that's when you say no. It's like, that's not something that we're able to do.
Justin, do you do a lot of corporate tours on the kayaks?
No, not really. Small corporate tours, people with 5 to 10 employees that just want to go out and have a fun little afternoon. They're not really focused on that. And I think like that's kind of what my add-on to Kai's point was and question was, is that for tours that, have a max capacity of 10 people to come on the tour, how do you get super focused on one thing? Because oftentimes our tours are 2 people that are booking, as a date night, and then you get 2 other people that are booking as their church friends, and then you get 2 other people that maybe are on a bachelorette party, like maybe 4 people that are, together like that. Like, how do you, to Kai's point, like I find that it would be difficult for me to narrow it down because I need to fill seats. And if I'm saying, hey, this is only a tour for bachelorette people, maybe that is 10 people that can fill that tour, but oftentimes like a lot of our tours are just two people, 5 groups of 2, that equals 10. And maybe it's not super customizable. So how do you find that sweet spot in the middle of the Venn diagram there to make that a good experience for all 10?
Yeah. So, well, that to me falls more into the bucket of then around like experience design and guide training. So a great tour leader, like within the confines of a design of a tour, like, hey, we're going to be in these kayaks, we're going to go down the river, we have X amount of time, X amount of highlights or stops or talking points or stories or whatever it might be. But a great tour leader should, this is a whole other side thing with the scripts or is not scripts, but should be able to adapt the tour depending who's on it, right? So if I imagine you would do this, Justin, when you were leading these yourselves, right? Depending on who's on it, the content that I might share, the stories, the engagement, the recommendations, etc. All of that can change just from the service level, right? If a tour leader is candidly doing their job as well as they could be. So you've got some wiggle room there, and depending on the tour. But that comes down to, okay, how do I do that at scale? How do I do that regularly? That's when those Be Better Guide videos come in. Like some people are just like, oh, well, some people have it, some people don't. And we stepped in and said, no, actually what they're doing is a very discrete list of things. Here are some of those things. Right? Notice here how they're, something as simple as like showing up early, like being there 10 minutes early with nothing to do, right? I love these tours where there's like equipment, and you guys might have this, but they're like running around. There's like, okay, we got to get the helmets, we get the kayaks, the paddles, and it's such a missed opportunity to like either have that sorted a little bit earlier, so you have 10 minutes prior to the tour to warmly welcome guests, to ask them some of those questions. Like, hey, what are you celebrating anything today? Talk to me, like, how can I make this trip as amazing as possible? Well, I'm really into birds. If you happen to see it, oh, love it. Okay, Janice, I got you there. Well, actually, we kind of had some, we're dinner plans later, but we're not sure. Or we've got this dinner reservation, but we need a dessert. Oh, don't worry, I got you. Right? That's where that like memorable, that bond from guide to guest can come in. That makes sense. Like it's
I wish there was a better way that like in the booking process, that it wasn't like, it didn't add friction to ask people a lot of questions of like, what are your interests? And because the first part of the tour, you have to your point, you kind of have to do that. You got to ask questions. Where are you from? Why are you here? What are your interests? And I wish you could just jump right into it, or maybe pair up people that have similar interests. And I find that maybe that's where this is all going now that we've got new tools with AI, and maybe there's ways to make that less frictional in the booking process or before they get there. But I think that would really help a lot of tours, is like knowing your guests before they even get there. But I do love starting the tour out with at least asking what their interests are and getting to know them, so that you can then position the whole rest of the tour around their interests. That's definitely something that like we try to do on all of our tours, and it's worked out really well, I think.
Yeah, you've seen, I'm not sure if you know the guys from Sourced Adventures. I don't think he's been to Arrival in a couple of years, but Kyle did this. But they were kind of like get out of the city, and they started in New York. I think they're in a couple other cities now up the East Coast. But they same sort of thing, like, hey, get out on a river, do a kayak. Hey, in the wintertime, you can get out, do a hike, etc. But they were very focused on locals, right? So again, a very different business model, right? So Justin, you can imagine like your kayaking experience. Like, are we focused on getting locals out on the river? So it's not just like, yeah, of course we want locals. We want locals, and we want the visitors, and we want the active people, and we want the. It's like, okay, but if you want more locals, then let's start looking at that. How would you change the content, the design, the nature of the experience? The Capilano Bridge, I'm gesturing here. I've been outside of Vancouver, but they have this bridge in their peak. They're doing like $2 million a day in sales. Like, it is one of the attractions. They just have a bus that goes from downtown Vancouver. It's a suspension bridge, whole park. But they have a number of initiatives that are aimed at, hey, when your friends and family are coming to town, you have a locals like discount, or hey, show up with your local provincial or state ID. Maybe we'll give you a little extra. Or they have specific events that are more focused on, that counter seasonal. So like, okay, there's a lot less tourists here in the end of October, but man, oh man, can we run the one heck of a Halloween family friendly thing? Or like, hey, we have special, right? So you can see how they have different offers, potentially different packages to sell specifically to those locals. So that's how I would approach filling up the boats. That's how I would approach. Now, again, we have to think about yield, and maybe we offer those on certain days of the week. It's also kind of just that like elevating experience. I think there's room. You have this really cool product, if I recall. All of your boats are the clear ones, right, Justin? Yeah. So you have this like a novelty built in. I think, Kai, with yours as well, especially the pedal boat is especially to me a little more novel, obviously, in the market. So that's great. Like, that in and of itself is an experience. But that will eventually like maybe peter out. And Justin, I don't know, maybe you notice that, like, oh, this is a great experience, I'll do it in multiple destinations. But then you got to like maybe level up the game, or like differentiate, or as competitors come in and they're like, oh, now there's company X and Y who also offer clear boat kayaks. Okay, so now we're not just the clear boat. So like, what is our value proposition? And There's a great company I worked with in Hawaii years back now, but they did this like Lunar Legends stand-up paddleboard experience, and they did it in evening time. They had the glow things underneath. I know you do that glow stuff, but the focus was on it was at the Polynesian Cultural Center. So it was this it's on Oahu, but basically it's an inland man-made waterway. But they would go around, and then you'd be in the Tonga section, and the Fiji section, and the Hawaii section, New Zealand section, and they would tell you different legends. Like it was about storytelling, and I was
cool.
like, wow, what a cool value proposition. That is essentially just like, versus, hey, come do a glow stand-up paddleboard tour.
Yeah.
No, it's like, hey, we this is about storytelling. This is about culture. The value proposition has shifted.
Yeah, I love the idea of trying to target specific audiences and cohorts and coming up with tours specifically for them. We tried doing like some ghost tours in a kayak where you could tell some stories, and target to a different audience than just the normal, throwing the cast net and hoping that you get a lot of people. And even the private tours do that to an extent too. Like there's a different market for people that are willing to pay more for a private tour. And it's something that I definitely want to go down the rabbit hole a little bit more of and explore more, because I feel like that it's a great opportunity to deliver exactly what someone is looking for. And at the end of the day, that's what people do tours for. It's like, this is exactly what I wanted to do when I'm here.
Well said.
So yeah, I
Here's
appreciate
a
that
last story,
insight.
just because it's related to my kids and struggling, like I said, with my hacking coffee here. When I was back east in Nova Scotia, there was this great little cafe that was focused on families with young kids. I forget exactly what it was, even the name, the something cafe. But anyway, like half of the inside was this indoor wooden play structure and area. There was a dividing wall, and you like chucked your kids in there, and mom and dad could like sit down, like have, my God, we need caffeine. But everything about it was totally optimized around us, right? Like all the electrical sockets were covered up. There was a Lego area that was there for the bigger kids, but it was separated from the play area. So my toddler was not going to choke on it. There was fun food at the cafes that kids would actually eat. That's not like wildly overpriced, but it's like star-shaped plate with some veggies. And like, just notice like how this is an experience for me and my family on an order of magnitude that's better than going to Starbucks.
Yeah.
Or going to that local cafe.
Yeah.
And notice how unappealing that value proposition is if you want to go write your next book, Justin. If you want to go and catch up with a good friend, Brett, or it's like the last thing you need is my snot-nosed kids like hucking Legos into your lattes. This would be a nightmare, right? But they're actively saying no. Like, no, you are welcome to come in. I'm not going to say, hey, by the way, where's your kids? Like, get out of here.
Yeah.
But how I market, how I sell, the pricing power I'm now going to have. I think the way that it worked is it was like, there was a fee, like $3 or $4 to have your kids go in, because they didn't want this just to be like a free play center for the things. But then you could apply that to the cafe or something. Like it was something that was pretty reasonable, but they had more pricing power. We paid more probably to go there, and happily we gave glowing reviews. Oh my gosh, this place was the best. And then
I love this.
Recommend and referred. Oh, look at this.
As a parent, this looks amazing.
I think
I've not seen
I think
this one.
it should just be called Legos and Lattes. I think you nailed it on the head.
Legos and Lattes. There we go.
That's all you need to call it.
This is super cool. This is not the one I went to, but like spot on. And like I just notice that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Of like, wow, that's what I want. Like we get you waste a lot of money on marketing, and you if you don't have a buyer persona, like you don't have the right message, you don't have the right person, like it's just gonna all go to crap, and you're gonna waste a lot of money and energy and time. But it's so much more insidious than that, and that's where that guest focus comes back in. Like you can actually create that memorable experience, that really 12-star, gonna remember it in 7 years from now experience. When you stop trying to be all things to all people, and you're just like, no, this experience is for this type of person, and man, oh man, can we sell the crap out of it, right? And
I think that's key. It's just the market, your ideal guest. There just has to be a big enough market for that ideal guest, right? Like if we just wanted horticulture, like people really interested in snails, I mean, like you could craft an amazing tour of snail watching, right? But there'd be like 3 people on Earth who would buy it. So it's like there's a some market analysis first. We got to say there's enough of this ideal customer first, right? Out there in the world.
We cover
Then
5 criteria.
Go around it.
When you're choosing, it's a step in our success path. So one of the things you get in our program is like 200 or 300 hours of recorded video training, done for you, best practices, tools, templates, the playbook to actually implement all the theory that we've been talking about here today. And one of those things, and most important choice, is that choosing your ideal target guest. And give you 5 criteria as a place to start around for like, is this a good ideal target guest? And so you hit that on the head, right? Another one is like, do they have the purchasing power, the buying power? You might be like, oh, I've got this like unbelievable experience. There's so many backpackers that come here, but it's like, $1,000 for the day. It's like, well, the backpackers are broke, or they just don't have that type of purchasing power. Or like, this is aimed at kids, but guess what? Like, kids don't have any money, right? And then there's some other criteria, just to give you one more, is like, if it's an enthusiast market, like that's massive. So you look at those tour companies that build multi-million-dollar tour businesses on Lord of the Rings tours, on Outlander tours, on you name whatever hit show, Atlanta, all the money that's made there. And again, they are serving that like very specific. If you are a fan of the show, if you care about like filming locations and fun stories and behind the scenes, and okay, think about spam, special moments, you can recreate that iconic moment and we'll take your photo and you can share it. Okay, special access. We're going to get you inside the actual studio or inside one of those places that you can't get on any other tour. So that's the access, special people. Like, okay, hey, we actually have some recorded video footage from the director. Maybe we reach out, we come to some sort of deal, we pay them one off, and now you have this special person who is sharing. That's only going to matter if you give a crap about this television show, or that if you have a hard on for hobbits, right? Like it's like, this is not actively, for most people going to New Zealand, probably aren't interested in putting on capes and running around.
Hard on for hobbits. That'd be an interesting
another
name of the
tour
tour.
name. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I like the creative
Legos
juices
and
are going here.
lattes and hard on for hobbits. Great.
Well,
This stuff sells itself.
so great having you on, Kelsey. I think we're up against time, but for people interested in Guest Focus, how would they find you?
Yeah, you can go to guestfocus.com. One of the offers that we've got there is you can jump on a free 45-minute strategy call with one of our coaches. We've always felt like one of the best ways to have a first impression with either a tour operator or somebody who works in this niche is like, give some free stuff, give the best practice, give some tools, go get results. And then if that works in your business, then like, come on back. And we've got lots more we can share. So there's a great, I'll call it just one other guide, the Irresistible Tour Descriptions Workbook. So we didn't get into the guest focus sales so much here today, but it's something that we hear over and over from the operators that we work with, that we might be great at designing experiences. We might be really good at maybe some of the business aspects or just hosting those experiences. But when it comes to putting those into words, how to actually describe it, many people struggle with that, right? So it's where most of us don't have a background in copywriting or e-commerce or even sales, right? So this is a complete playbook. It's just a 40-page workbook where we go through, we have 12 essential elements that we want to see on every sales page. And yeah, we give you a step-by-step methodology. So you can go through, implement this stuff, get some more revenue, get some more profit, get some more sales. And then like I said, if you want to talk to us about some coaching, we'd love to help.
I gotta work, grind. That's just the way it is. I gotta get up, scale, and grow my biz. I gotta scale.